the Gauls called for aid. Germanic hordes were trespassing on allied lands and attacking Octodoron. Answering the call, the Roman governor of Cisalpine Gaul laid siege to the city and used all of his artillery to break down their defenses. By creating a massive breach in the walls, not to forget the siege ladders he brought along, Roman legionnaires stormed the city. The freezing temperatures were neutralized by adrenaline and the blazing watchtowers. There was only one path to success, and it was forward. Towering above their enemies, our troops sliced their way through, leaving no quarters for escape. Caesar was in Gaul. But who was this man that just saved the Roman allies? 16 years after the Mithridatic Wars, Gaius Julius Caesar, the man imprisoned by Marc Antony's Crassus during a Marian attack on Sicily, had made quite a name for himself. Indebted to Crassus not just for sparing his life, but monetarily too, Caesar thrived in the new Senate. Sulla had long since passed away, and Pompey was considered the most influential man in the entire Republic. Through extensive loans and political maneuvering, Caesar had scored himself the most surreal deal imaginable. He received command of not just 2, but 3 entire provinces, one of these of course being Cisalpine Gaul, a frontier province with endless potential for those with ambition to act upon it. With Germanic tribes threatening the Aeduan Allobroges, Caesar had the perfect excuse to march his legions into the beast of a chaotic realm that was practically without any roads or manpower to guide him. Accompanied by Decimus Brutus and the second son of Crassus, Publius, Caesar was about to make a name for himself. There were countless tasks to attend to, but the first and perhaps most important of these was to solidify the fealty of the Gallic tribes he just saved. Trade and formal military alliance treaties were signed, strengthening our left flank. This way we could focus on the Germans to the north. In order to properly stand up to their countless hordes, we had to establish our might. This we would do by consolidating our position in Cisalpine Gaul, mustering an army strong enough for us to be on a campaign beyond the Alps for longer than an entire year. That is far easier said than done considering the temperate climate in this part of Europe. The winters are no joke. Early on, Caesar was quite active on the political front. For instance, he acquired the aid of his cousin once removed, named Marc Antony, made multiple investments into making Cisalpine financially independent from the rest of the Republic, and even hired agents to oversee the conversion process of Octodoron, so they could assimilate with our Latin culture. You could say Caesar had a keen eye for warfare. He believed every battle could be won before it was ever fought, making him a master of logistics. But even in battle, his cunning mind heralded him as a skilled tactician. But no matter how experienced you are at logistics, only the brightest mind can cross the Alps without suffering from attrition. Heck, Publius Crassus was merely crossing with a few units of cavalry in the middle of spring, and still had the dense layer of snow claim our soldiers. It turned out only the summer months allowed safe passage. With all this said and done, it was clear to Caesar that if he needed to make anything for his term as governor, he needed someone to defend his political views while he was away. He needed to form a political alliance with the 2 most powerful men of Rome, their longtime rivals Pompey and Crassus. First, he arranged a marriage between Pompey and his daughter Julia to strengthen their ties, and then began promoting Pompey's claim to serve as governor over the 2 Hispanic provinces in absentia. This would give Pompey both economic and military power to further strengthen his political power in the Senate. With regards to Marcus Licinius Crassus, if these men were to form a political alliance, Caesar would be at the short end of the stick unless he paid his debt to him. Additionally, this would end his reliance on Crassus to get literally anything done. However, in order to keep Crassus on his side, apart from enlisting his son as legatus, Caesar too began promoting Crassus as the consul of Rome, so he inevitably could govern the lands of Syria, a province that too held opportunities for military glory, something you might remember Crassus desperately desired. The first triumvirate was born. With the political front in check, Caesar marched out towards Turicum. Publius Crassus led the main scouting party, solely consisting of cavalry. This way he had better movement range that you in due time will see come in handy. Marc Antony tailed behind with our current army reserves, while Caesar personally led the main army. However, such an expedition beyond the Alps is expensive, not to forget the many political moves also exhausted our treasury. We needed to do something to fund our war effort. This task was for now delegated to Decimus Brutus and a man named Gaius Cassius Longinus. Even saying his name makes me sick. Nevertheless, as the legions closed in on Turicum, the Germans went on the offensive. Somehow they managed to chase away Crassus and his scouting party, leaving Caesar to defend himself. Although trees were all around him, disrupting his field of view, he could actually deploy his army in a clearing from where he could adjust his army formation if necessary. The Scorpions were placed on a small hill overlooking the upcoming battlefield. Concerned of how the Germanic tribe would attack, Caesar sent out his remaining cavalry to keep a close eye on the enemy. Hidden in the tree line, they spotted the Germans attacking with very disorganized units. Truly barbaric, similar to the fighting style of the Ligurians that once inhabited the lands Caesar now governed. As they closed in, our cavalry decided to fall back to our army. This mission of theirs acquired more than enough information for our ballistae to pinpoint their position, with our infantry en route as well. It was on the left where the battle truly began though, with our cavalry fending off the opposition who tried to reach our Scorpions. Our front line was stretched to the limit, some places even exceeding it, considering the gaps that opened up. This also opened an opportunity for our Cretan archers to fire straight into the enemy, so long their aim was true. A statement that couldn't be carried over to our ballistae, who continuously blasted our own troops into their rear. This caused so much chaos that Caesar commanded his men to stop, just for him personally to ride up towards the front line, inspiring morale, maneuvering behind enemy lines and then breaking the Germanic offensive on the right flank. Caesar then gave the go-ahead sign for his ballistae to fire once more, while he spread the news of how the balance of power was shifting. A victory in the name of Minerva. With a decisive victory to prove his tactical prowess, Caesar had decided to regroup with Marc Antony and Crassus before making the final push to take down the Iron Mine that the Germanic horde had laid camp upon. This resource was something that more than paid up for the losses we suffered in entering this feud. But the summer months were almost over, meaning the legions had to return back home. A single scout was placed along the edge of our territory to keep an eye on the last Germanic tribe that had crossed into Gaul, the Suevos. They had gone to war with the Aedui, our long-term ally, and thus caused many diplomats to plead for our help. But as mentioned, the winter season can be quite unpredictable, dangerous even, so just for the time being, we had to pass on this. As time went by, it became evident that Caesar couldn't get his army across the Alps in time. Therefore, he sent Marc Antony on his own to arrange for supplies to be delivered at Octodoron, a town that increasingly resembled a proper Roman city. Additionally, since Caesar was unable to handle this task himself, Marc Antony was also charged with mobilizing troops for the army. Something that in his eyes meant working on mercenary auxiliaries and physical conditioning for his men. As winter struck, Caesar enforced an extremely high taxation policy. Some might think of this as cruelty considering how the winter caused trouble for, well, everyone. Except the revenue wasn't actually spent on the army just yet, but the towns and cities he governed. With these objectives set in motion, Caesar redirected his focus back to the political front. Taking advantage of his political alliance, he influenced both Pompey and Crassus to form a trade network that brought both silk and marble to the Gallic market. This would make it a lot easier to befriend the various Gallic tribes, as exotic goods can turn the heads of even the most barbaric chieftains. And also, this is why you see this icon around our regions. As the snow began to melt, taxes were immediately lowered, and Marc Antony prepared the legions he was sent to mobilize. Caesar, however, wouldn't simply wait around for him to catch up. It was the start of a new season, and this time, he didn't have the Alps to slow him down. The legions were on the march again. The many calls for aid against the Swabians were about to be answered, but proper road networks were limited in this part of the world, so traveling was quite slow. Nevertheless, we made it work, even crossing these small rivers that blocked our path. We were not the only ones on the march, heck, even the Sequani went on to confront the invaders. It is good to see all of their goals aligned with ours. Well, while it lasts. Crassus was the first to cross into occupied territory. Here he raided and looted local crops while waiting for Caesar to catch up. However, the Germans didn't expect him to be there too, meaning they simply reinforced the region with a smaller retinue. While the troops made ready to fight, Crassus discovered a golden opportunity. As the commander of all of our cavalry, he led them straight towards this major gap between the two Germanic armies. The further he committed to this maneuver, the less space he had available. Spearmen were rapidly closing in, forcing him to split up his cavalry, even making hit-and-run attacks to ensure the success. As he and his cavalry made it through the lines, they could now unleash their unrelenting strikes against the enemy back line, breaking their lines almost on impact. It was another decisive victory. Following the battle, the cavalry rode in advance to loot the nearby town. The last few events here proved Crassus was a truly skilled cavalryman. All this gold was sent back and invested into improving our infrastructure and armor workshops. It is also quite important to mention how our way of fighting may in some way have inspired the Celts to reform their own armies, implementing heavily armored infantry and cavalry. Nothing to worry about. After all, we had the Swabians to look out for. They had somehow repelled the Gallic armies that were yet to be reformed and established themselves even further north than we had ever been. Therefore, it was quite unexpected to see the Germanic armies marching away from us. Crassus was sent to take a closer look and found himself in the middle of a skirmish with the Germanic scouts. Making the most out of our cavalry advantage, we spread out our lines to then slowly surround the enemy. Their units tried to gather themselves together, making it harder for us to strike. Yet through careful maneuvering, opportunities arose, with our cavalry hammering into the enemy infantry from multiple sides. The spearmen were, of course, harder to eliminate, but in such situations, equites simply dismounted, keeping them contained until the remaining units arrived. Anyone captured were immediately enslaved and sent back to Rome. While we were aiding the Aedui, the Volcanti, a client state of ours, too began calling for aid. The Volcae had a growing presence in Narbonensis, and even somewhat threatened the land bridge that linked our republic from Italy to Iberia. But as the Volcanti didn't want to pay for the salaries our troops required, this war would have to wait. Caeser was too busy anyway, seizing yet another village in the middle of the forest, a forest that secretly concealed over 4,000 German invaders. However, they made a mistake attacking us here. This village was placed on a hill with limited access to ascend. Legionnaires were deployed on every slope, with archers and artillery firing away without any fear of getting engaged. As the Germanic waves struck, our scorpions continuously placed precision shots straight into the queue of men waiting to get pierced by our gladiators. Projectiles were flying everywhere, making it possible for our troops to break through and overwhelm the enemy. Once Crassus and the cavalry arrived, it was all over. A decisive victory preserved the Roman offensive for about half a month. Ariovistus, the Swabians' leader, was approaching from the west with yet another army. As Caesar looked upon his exhausted army, he decided it was best for them to fall back to Roricum, where they could wait for Marc Antony to catch up. Foolishly seeing our retreat as a sign of weakness, Ariovistus attacked us at this extremely defendable position. There were no surprise in him leading his last few units across the river, so we couldn't pursue them. Now that no one was trying to destroy us, we simply went on standby, drilling our troops and hiring new local Gauls to serve as our cavalry. Other commanders, such as Decimus Brutus, spent the time getting more acquainted with the female population of the land. By autumn, Marc Antony arrived with 7 new units, ready to take on the challenges ahead. Our spy, who by now had infiltrated the local population, suddenly revealed a massive fortress deep inside the forest. This was the stronghold of Ariovistus, and his Suevos tribe. Simply getting there basically seemed impossible, especially with the winter on its way. However, the Germanic chieftain couldn't have gotten all the way back there considering his recent attack. No, he went directly north towards Theodorum. Caeser was on the hunt, even trespassing through neutral territories to get into line of sight of the village. Except Ariovistus wasn't anywhere to be seen. No, we found yet another army just waiting for us to overextend our supply lines, for them to then pounce on it at the first opportunity. Caeser attacked the 7,000 Germans.